focused? Alright. Okay.
Oh, it's out of focus again.
Damn it. Okay, one of us has to be, like, in the middle. Here, we gotta move closer to the middle. Hey, oh, almost. What? Okay. All this will eventually get edited out. There we go. That's better. Not way better, but better. Oh, we got a new logo down there. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alright, hold on. Let me find where we are in the notes, and then we can do the intros.
Okay.
Make this as loud in the mic as possible. Okay, alright. Why is this... Oh, I went too far. There it is.
Okay.
Don't judge me. It's my turn to do the intros, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Welcome to Themes to be Seen. I'm Matt Klaus.
I'm Tara Kostic.
And we have a show where we talk about and analyze music videos and movies. We have 3 segments tonight. Our first segment is Seen Again, where we'll be talking about The Replacement Killers from 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Our second segment is Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode, and our Themes to be Heard segment, where we talk about music videos that are influential. And the conclusion, the final part of our analysis of It Follows.
At last.
It seems like we've been doing this for a long time.
It does.
But it doesn't seem like half the work it used to be on our old style episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Our old style episodes, we were doing 18-hour research marathons, and to the point where we'd be snapping at each other, and it was ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
But this is much easier, much more sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Because now it's like Sundays are the day where we totally devote to the show, so
we started about noonish, and we just kind of work on it until right up till showtime, and here we are.
Dyson says hello.
There's a Dyson sighting, everybody. And you gonna lay down? Oh, and he's gone.
Go lay on the couch.
Yep.
Maybe.
All right. The Replacement Killers from 1998 with a crazy cast. So, it's a crazy cast of 2 main actors and some of the coolest 90s character actors there were.
Okay, so first of all, Seen Again, this segment, we typically talk about movies we loved when we were younger, and we rewatch them to see if they still hold up. Now, this was a movie that you have seen. I had never seen it before.
It's because I kind of have this reputation as an action movie connoisseur. Mm-hmm. This was one of the ones that, because in the 90s there were so few great American action movies, all the action movies that came out in the 90s were really toned down. They were watered down. There was no story. They threw story right out the window, and it was just reason to be in the next action scene. This is a breath of fresh air for the action. Like, it's so cool. There's so many very 90s moments, but also classical action movie portions.
Yeah, this really did take me back to the 90s. Mostly because of the music.
The music is very... actually, and I'll, like, once we get into it, you'll know exactly what we're talking about, because I'm... Especially if you listen on Spotify, because that first song, I looked it up. I'm throwing that right in the beginning of the episode, because it's so great. But
yeah, I can't believe this is from 1998. Like, I can't believe it's that old.
Directed by one of the great action... And he's not even considered an action director, and I don't know why, because all his movies are amazing action movies. Antoine Fuqua. But executive produced with huge quotation marks by John Woo.
Yeah.
you can watch this movie and tell that John and Antoine were standing there together doing this all together, because there's so much of this film that just looks like his Hong Kong films.
So this was Fuqua's directorial debut.
Which is insane.
To this day, many would know him for directing Training Day, the remake of The Magnificent Seven.
Yes.
Was it? The Equalizer movies. His newest movie is called The Guilty, which is on Netflix. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal.
Also, which leads a segue
and
into
Southpaw.
the first movie we ever watched together.
Yeah.
Southpaw.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
So he has these actors that he works with regularly. So Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke, Jake Gyllenhaal. Even the composer of this movie has composed some of his other films.
one of the big bummers of us doing that part of this research is that we realized that the composer, the composition for this film is not on Spotify. It's not on any streaming service. You can't find it.
That's a bummer.
So I'm gonna have to throw in some of these really cool house techno 90s songs.
Because
I'm putting them in here.
It has an original score, but it also has songs from like the Crystal Method,
Death in Vegas,
Head PE, yeah,
Death in
a
Vegas.
lot of electronic based music.
When I say Death in Vegas, not very many people know what I'm talking about particularly until you bring up that one commercial. There was a car commercial in the 90s where there was a Death in Vegas song playing, and she was just doing this weird robot dance in the front seat.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. What I know them for, so in the 90s, we had like MTV and stuff, but we also, our cable package had these other music channels, and one was called The Box, and you could like call in and request music videos, and I always remember seeing this one. I think the song is called Aisha, and it has Iggy Pop.
That's actually, that video that you're bringing up was the genesis for Themes to Be Heard, because we watched that video together.
And it's very heavily inspired by The Evil Dead, because it's a lady in this red dress like running through the woods, and there's something chasing her that you never see, and it's this creepy song that just has Iggy Pop like talking over it, and she runs into this big house, and she's just being chased the whole time, and that's what I remember always seeing from them on The Box.
The Crystal Method, the reason I remember them is because I was a super nerd, and one of the CDs I remember buying with my own money as a kid, and if anybody ever like walked in on me listening to that now, it would be super embarrassing, but the Lost in Space movie remake movie was all this techno-y super like house music, and they had like 3 songs on that soundtrack.
I feel like we tried to rewatch that a few years ago,
and it was
I
really
fell
bad.
asleep.
It's not good.
Yeah.
But like the first half of it is not good, and the second half is super confusing. Because they try to do time travel, and they try to do, somehow they got Jared Harris, this super well-respected actor, to be, and it's just a mess. But the music in this is used well. Yes, it's super 90s techno music, but it's used in a way that's not embarrassing.
It fits really well with the style of this movie. So I didn't think this movie had like the greatest story. Like there's been countless movies with similar stories to this, but what makes it stand out is the style of it.
It's beautiful.
The use of color, the use of slow motion that isn't cheesy.
Slow motion that makes the scene feel dramatic.
Yeah. And yeah, the action sequences, and I feel like the music complements it perfectly. Like, there are shots in this movie that are very beautiful.
They're gorgeous. And then, of course, the John Woo style of gun ballet.
Oh, there's a lot of guns in this
where
movie.
It looks like dancing.
Oh, we gotta bring up the pictures.
I'm glad you said that because we were literally just talking about it and then I didn't do it.
So, a lot of the pictures I do have, you'll see, like, all the guns. There's a lot of people with guns, like, directly in their faces and stuff like that.
But if you've seen a John Woo movie before, or even an Antoine Fuqua movie, guns are used consistently, but also tastefully. It's not like a Rambo movie or a Schwarzenegger movie where it's just like tons of bullets and they're flying everywhere. Like, it's all in a way where you know where every gun is pointed, you know who's doing what. It has a real impact. Like, in those movies, guns would hit something and then explosions and you don't have any real context as to what's going on. In this movie, there is a very clear pathway that you can see, all right, this car's taking damage from this way from guns, and these two characters are right beneath that, and it moves this way. Or even, like, when everybody's on foot, especially one scene we'll get to later in the Meg character's apartment, that is one of those, which John Woo movies are known for, what's called the gun ballet, especially the movies he did with Chow Yun-fat, where it looks like dancing. It looks like this very flowing motion. He was the first one in film to show somebody using a gun or a pistol in each hand and, like, moving the camera with them as they, like, jumped over a desk or something. And you see that a couple times in this. So
there is a specific scene too where a villain character is shot and they drop their machine gun, and Chow Yun-fat has the opportunity to grab the machine gun, but he doesn't. He just tucks his own guns back in.
So let's actually get to it.
Yeah.
We start, of course.
Well, we didn't even talk about the cast.
Oh!
So
this cast!
This was Chow Yun-fat's American debut. Prior to this, everything on his filmography was based in Hong Kong. So this was his... What?
They're all great.
Yeah.
Anything Chow Yun-fat did with, especially with John Woo, like, he did other things, but especially the movies he did with John Woo in Hong Kong, they're so... we have, like, what, 4 of them back here? Like, The Killer especially is super influential on action overall.
I forgot what I was saying.
Oh, sorry. First American movie.
Yeah, so the first time he's acting and speaking English in a movie. We also have Mira Sorvino. The cast in this movie is pretty insane. Michael Rooker, Danny Trejo is in this.
And that's where, after you hit Danny Trejo, is where you start getting into these really cool 90s character actors.
Yeah.
So you got Jürgen Prochnow, who consistently always played bad guy businessman, bad guy lawyer, you know what I mean? He was always that guy. Who else? Oh, I had them all written down, and then I forgot.
I'm surprised.
Not only that, there's a point that we'll come to that, talking about Michael Rooker, where I have to bring up something you said. But,
basically, Antoine Fuqua, his aim for this movie was to make, like, a 90s version of Taxi Driver. And, I think these days everyone knows about Mira Sorvino. So her dad is actor Paul Sorvino, and in the 90s, she won an Academy Award. She won a Best Supporting Actress award for a Woody Allen movie, and her career was on the rise. And then it seemed like she disappeared, but now sadly we know it is because that scumbag Harvey Weinstein ruined her career.
That fucking piece of shit.
Because she would not
sleep with him.
Accept any of his advances, so he purposely like blacklisted her. There was a big role that she was supposed to get. I don't remember offhand what it was, but it was for a big movie, and he specifically said, "Do not cast Mira Sorvino," and that was kind of
that part of the whole Shakespeare in Love debacle?
No, that was Winona Ryder and Gwyneth Paltrow, which is probably a story for another day.
Okay.
But yeah, so basically he
ruined
her career.
Which, if you imagine Paul Sorvino's known for mob movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say he's connected, but we also can't assume he's not. So, if at any time, which means that in real life, Mira Sorvino is a super independent person, because at any time she could have gone to her dad and been like, hey, we know some people, we got to take care of this thing. Mm-hmm. And she didn't.
But that shows you the power that Harvey Weinstein had in Hollywood. But at the time of this movie, so, like, she was, starting this, like, career. She was in, like, Mimic, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, a few other things, but she had actually gone to Harvard and majored in Asian studies, so she already spoke Mandarin, and she spent about 8 months during this time living in China, and she was teaching English, and she watched a lot of martial arts films and stuff while she continued to learn the language. So it kind of became like a goal of hers to make a martial arts film and work with a martial arts director. And so this movie was made after Mimic, but she still had to go and do reshoots for Mimic where she was screaming, so she had blown her voice out, and Antoine Fuqua really liked the way that her voice sounded, so he asked her to keep it for the character, so it became something she would do on a daily basis before shooting. She would just
blow her voice out,
and purposely blow her voice out. So yeah, just knowing these things about her, it's already a really sad story, but it makes it worse because she had already won an Oscar, and like she could have had this even greater career, and then this one man just had to ruin it.
Which, you saying that she had really wanted to make a martial arts film with a known martial arts director makes a lot of sense, because there are some emotional points in this film where it really seems like a passion project to her. You really see her pushing herself in her craft to make it a good scene.
She took weapons training and everything for this role, but it's sad because I feel like she's really good in this movie. She could have made more action movies, and the chemistry with her and Chow Yun-fat, by the end of this movie, I just wanted them to go off and get married.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, as we go through the rest of the cast, now that I have it pulled up because I forgot to write it down, Michael Rooker, who's always been just a most younger audiences would know Michael Rooker now as Yondu Odonta from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He's Mary Poppins, y'all. But all the way from the late 70s to the time we're talking about, the 90s, he was in all sorts of genre films. Horror movies, action movies. Recently I listened to one of our inspirations, We Hate Movies, did a movie called The Sixth Day, and it's a Schwarzenegger movie where Michael Rooker plays, a heavy, the bad guy's heavies, and they said he's the best part of the movie. He's great. He gives these awesome lines.
That's a movie that I've never seen.
I think I saw it once when I was a kid, and it went over my head kind of thing, because it's not super action-y. It's more like espionage-y, and I didn't think I cared for it that much. We might have to just find it and watch it just for the hell of it. But Michael Rooker, Horror aficionados would know him as Henry from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is an absolutely tragic film. But if you go through every year, you'll find a action movie or a horror movie from 1983 until today.
As a kid, I always knew him from Cliffhanger.
Oh, also, people slightly younger than us would know him from The Walking Dead. He was Merle.
Oh yeah, he was also in Slither, which was
The long
an early
one.
James Gunn movie.
He was the long one.
Yep.
Yeah. So, storied Michael Rooker. Next is Kenneth Song.
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth Song is known especially in Honk. Is that him snoring? What's he doing out there?
I think he's snoring. He's just right here.
Oh, okay. He's known for mainly John Woo films. He's a John Woo mainstay. If you watch one of John Woo's Hong Kong films, Kenneth Song is likely going to be in it, which is, we see these character swapping moments for these actors in this film because he's usually police chief.
Mm-hmm.
He's usually Chow Yun-fat's sidekick or boss or something to that effect. And in this, he plays this ruthless mob lord, which is kind of a cool switch for him because he always has this very stoic face. Like, he's always been this serious looking guy. So I think it fits him well.
Mm-hmm.
Jürgen Prochnow, German actor who transitioned into like action films. That's the guy I said always plays the lawyer or the consigliere. He's always like second guy to the main bad guy. Danny Trejo, legendary, right there, legendary Danny Trejo. You may know from Desperado, Machete Kills, literally anything that Robert Rodriguez makes. Till Schweiger, who's usually just the heavy. Till Schweiger usually gets cast as heavy bad guy.
Yeah, most might know him from Inglourious Basterds.
Ah, yeah, he's the guy that gets the swastika carved in his forehead, isn't he?
I thought he... I don't remember the name of the character, but I thought he was, like, on their side. Like, I'm trying to remember how it goes, but...
We're gonna have to rewatch Inglourious Basterds. There's so many people in that movie.
Yeah.
Clifton Collins Jr., which generally my buddy Nick is watching. He's not on yet. But most people who are into underground action movies would know Clifton Collins Jr. as Romeo from Boondock Saints Day 2.
If you switch to the Twitch one, does anything show up?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
So that's on the right
Yep.
one. Okay.
Clifton Collins, he's been around for a long time. He does a lot of work with, who's the guy that thought up, like, Reno 911, and he's doing the Puppet Master, or the Puppet Master movies now. The comedy guy.
Thomas Lennon?
Yeah, he does a lot of work with Thomas Lennon.
Does he?
Yeah.
I just think of him from, like, Capote.
He's in Capote. But he did that, Exorcist, that comedy Exorcist movie. Like, they play, like...
Comedy Exorcist movie?
With
What?
Thomas Lennon.
What movie is that?
Oh, man. Hold on, pause. It was like a halfway funny movie he did with Thomas Lennon, and they're like Hellbenders. It's him, Thomas Lennon, and Clancy Brown.
When was that made?
2012.
I am not familiar.
I guess he was in a Highlander movie too. I just saw that.
But yeah, he was very young in this movie.
He's super young in The Replacement Killers. Oh no. My phone. Help. Okay. There. I did it. Carlos Gomez, mostly known for police procedurals in the 90s. And then Patrick Kilpatrick, who's also just another guy that you'll see in... He's a lot like Brian Thompson in the sense that you'll see him as bad guy number 5,
Mm-hmm.
but you can sit. He's always noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's when you see all these people put into this movie and used so effectively, it's kind of cool. So that's the cast.
Mm-hmm.
We begin the movie.
I didn't take extensive notes on this just because it was
Right.
my first time seeing
I did.
it. So
I took a lots of notes because this was such a cool movie for me as a younger person,
Mhm.
because I got stuck into this loop of watching, okay, how many especially back in 1998, how many Bruce Lee movies not can I watch, but how many can I find?
Mm-hmm.
There was this thing of, how do I find movies from these actors that I love, and how do I get to watch them? So at the time, Jet Li was also making his rise, which this movie kind of has a sister movie in the same sense that's not near as good, called Kiss of the Dragon.
Yeah. I feel like I remember when that one came out more than this one.
Well, I don't feel like this one got as big of a marketing push, even though Kiss of the Dragon is not as good of a movie.
Yeah. Well, I think this came out around the time Titanic did.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's true. Titanic kind of dominated.
The opening weekend, like, it did come in at number 2, but then it quickly was dropping off because Titanic was so huge and it kept holding on to the number 1 spot. So.
There were very few regularly featured action movies at the time, and this is also right around the dying days of the mid-budget film. So Jet Li was probably the big name in martial arts at the time. You had Kiss of the Dragon, Unleashed, Romeo Must Die, all really close together. Which Romeo Must Die, co-starring DMX, is actually a good movie. People hate on it. It's actually a good movie.
Is that the one with Aaliyah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We start out with some cool red font. Like they're not like bloody, and they're not drawn particularly as Asian characters either. But the font is just cool enough to fit the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we start with the Crystal Method, their song "Keep the Hope Alive," and it's just, and it's perfect because he's walking. We get the obligatory '90s club scene.
Yeah.
We don't see Chow Yun-fat's face. We see him from behind, and he's just making his way through the club crowd. He gets to this table of these guys doing blow, and it's never made explicitly clear, but these bullets that are inscripted with this Chinese character, it's your time. When it's handed to you, I'm here for you. So he puts this bullet down on the table, and all these guys look up, and before they can even move, he decimates, and it's classic John Woo moving too, because there's one right in front of him, and then he moves his left hand twice, and then he turns to his right, and it's this classic, beautiful. The big thing about John Woo movies is Chow Yun-fat's jacket just flows behind him like a cape. I love it, and it's a good scene because then he walks out, and there's the shot, and it's almost shot in front of Chow Yun-fat, where it's at a mirror, and you see him in this broken, bloodied mirror, and it's him just kind of assessing the aftermath, and the camera's never on him, it's him seen through this mirror, and it's a really cool shot. We switch over to Michael Rooker, playing Officer Zedov, which Tara was super confused for the first 20 minutes of this movie. Because usually when you see Michael Rooker, you're like, oh, he's a bad guy. Oh, here's our bad guy. Especially 90s Michael Rooker, because he had this really, not even 90s goatee. It was just like a goatee that he didn't normally, right there, he doesn't normally have. And so he kind of looks like bad guy, but he's not. He's actually a cop in this movie, and he's actually a really good guy in this movie, which is not normal if you know his career. We switch to this drug bust, and there's this very 90s scene with these night optics and lots of beeps and boops, and they call in backup, and they take down this big coke bust, and at the end, and it there's a lot of this scene that, and I wrote this down, that you could copy and paste all the actions and the movement into a Western. Mm-hmm. Especially, like, the one main guy that we'll get into his significance in a moment of this drug bust, he has his hand behind his back, and Michael Rooker has his hand on his gun, and he he shakes his head at him like, don't. And then he pulls his gun, and then that's when the craziness happens, and it's something you'd see in a Western. Like, two guys have their hand on their guns, and one's like, just, there's no need for it, and then everything just pops off at once. So there's some really cool car stuff here too, and at the end he has that same guy, he's shot in the shoulder, and he's like, look, if you just put the gun down, you can go with me, you don't have to die. I can, yeah, you're going away, but I don't have to kill you. And the guy pulls his gun up, and he does end up shooting him, which we get this insane stunt that a person actually did of his body falling off the side of this, like, shipping boat. And it looks like it takes forever. Yeah, so he ends up being the son of Kenneth Tsang's triad boss. Kenneth Tsang playing, what's his name? Terrence Way. Yeah. Is the name of this triad boss, who's very stoic. He's very calm. He doesn't really, even in the moments where he's confronted with the conflict of the film, he doesn't really... What? Why are you laughing at me?
I'm laughing at your note because the next scene is the funeral scene, and Michael Rooker shows up at the funeral.
And he is honestly, I truly believe this character is honestly there because he feels bad about having to kill the kid.
And that's the thing, too, because, like, they're passing him on their way out, and they're like, oh, way to show up to the funeral of someone you murdered, and he's like, I'm just paying my respects. And I think this is when I was like, wait, is Michael Rooker playing a good guy?
Yeah, I actually had to pause it for a second.
And he actually has a note about me saying
that. Yeah, it says, my note says, at this point, Tara was super confused. This is where we first meet the lawyer. I didn't even get the name of Jürgen Prochnow's character.
Oh, yeah, me either.
I mean, at a certain point, it doesn't really matter. But he's telling it, yeah. This is where he tells Michael Rooker's character that, like, all right, well, that this is coming back. Don't think this is over. Mm-hmm. This is just the beginning for you. And we actually see Chow Yun-fat meet with Terrence Way. Chow Yun-fat playing John Lee. And he tells him, look, I want you to kill Zidov's son, but I need you to do it in a way that it's right in front of him. And it's made explicit that is the goal for this killing, is for it to happen right in front of Michael Rooker's character. And it's also said in this scene that when you're done with this, your debt will be paid. You'll be free to go. Which you don't know what debt it is at this point. You don't know what's free, what. But that sets up our John Lee character and why you should care about him, because he doesn't want to be this killer. Mm-hmm. When we cut right to John. Like, this is how good John is. As soon as he says that, he's got Zidov and his son in the driveway of their house in this really cool scope. They do this really cool, like, thing where it almost looks like you're looking through John's point of view, and he opens his eye through the scope. Mm-hmm. Like, you look right through the scope, and it's super, like, the CGI of it's a little dated, but it goes by so fast that it doesn't look bad. Yeah. And then now we're basically looking through the scope with him for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And we learn a lot. There's no dialogue here. Nothing crazy happens. But we learn a lot about both characters in this scene of him looking down the scope, because we're switching back and forth between the point of view in the scope and John's face. And the longer he looks and the more he watches him play with his son, you see him like start to tear up. He starts to grit his teeth. Mm-hmm. He's got his finger on the trigger, and he's like, he looks away for a second. He looks back down the scope. He looks down. Like, we see his face starts to get really red, like he's getting agitated, and then he takes his finger off the trigger. Mm-hmm. And you can tell he just can't.
Mm-hmm. And that whole time, too, you only see the one eye of his.
The scope and the gun is covering the other half of his face. So Chow Yun-fat is so damn good. Mm-hmm. He gives you all of this. He gives you this whole story going on in this guy's head with one half of his face. I don't know how many people that may see this know the difficulty of acting in general, but doing that seems like an impossibility. If a director came up to just any old actor and said, yes, you're going to have to tell this whole story, but it's going on in your character's head, you're going to say no words and you're only going to tell it with half your face, you would say it's impossible.
He does it quite a lot throughout the movie, too, just with his facial expressions. Like, there's a scene at, like, that arcade place where he's in the photo booth, and I forget the line that she says to him, but he kind of just gives her this, like, funny look. Or when they're saying goodbye at the end and he's just, like, staring back at her, and it's like he's saying so much without saying anything.
Right, and all he says in that ending scene, "I'll miss you."
Yeah, but I mean, before then, he's staring at her just for more than 30 seconds.
And you know that
and that's when my heart was like, oh, I just wish they would get married in real life or something.
And let's be very seriously honest. 1990s Chow Yun-fat is a good-looking dude. He's a handsome man. Look at that motherfucker. Yeah. He is...
Even Antoine Fuqua, so this was the first movie he directed, so he has both good and bad memories associated with it, because this was his first time learning how to work with, like, the Hollywood studios, and he learned more of what he doesn't want when it comes to making movies. But he said that Chow Yun-fat was, like, the most beautiful man and, like, the coolest person on the planet.
Yeah.
And
I believe it.
I know I have read stuff about him that even though he is wealthy, like, he lives as if he doesn't have anything. Like,
he lives a modest life.
Yeah, and he has already, like, made plans that, because I don't think he has children or anything. Him and I don't know if it was his first wife or his second wife, they did have a stillborn daughter, but I don't think he has any kids. So he said that when he passes away, like, all of his money is gonna go to charity. But he basically, like, I'm not sure where exactly he lives, but people see him all the time just in random shops, and he lives, like, on the bare minimum.
This would be a good time to discuss the history, and I'm not gonna cry, between Chow Yun-fat and John Woo. One of the greatest actor-director duos in movie history, because they knocked out movie after movie. Like, for probably 15 years, they did a movie a year in Hong Kong. And I defy you to find two in a row that are bad. They're hard to find in America. They're super hard to find in America. But if you can find them, there are some pretty easy ones to find, like The Killer and this. But they worked together for so long that, like family members do, they started to fight. And it wasn't just disagreements, it got ugly. because John Woo has an ego. He knows who he is. He knows what his art means. And he gets upset if anyone questions it. So, at the end of them working together, when Chow started to make suggestions, even after 10, 15 years, John didn't appreciate it. So, their relationship that they had going, and they were extremely close, just disintegrated. And this, I believe, this was one of the last times they worked together on a film, even if John wasn't the director. Which is super sad.
Yeah.
I feel like someday when we talk about, we've talked about just a random, like, movies we love segment, we'll have to, because The Killer isn't exactly a scene again, but it is a movie I'd like to do, like, a show on.
Yeah, we could do that.
And it's just a perfect time to talk about that relationship, because those films, if you see a movie like on Prime or Netflix and it stars Chow Yun-fat and it's directed by John Woo, or even produced by John Woo, watch it. It'll be worth your time, I promise. They're so good together. And it's almost always like a cop drama, but it's always beautiful to watch. I forgot where we were, damn it. So he leaves the scene of it. After they cut away from John taking his finger off the trigger and putting the rifle down, there's this thing where the camera the camera's like at Michael Rooker's feet, and it pans up and you see this wind take these leaves and blow these leaves away as if something has changed. It's almost like a metaphysical showing that something has changed. And it's very quick, and it's not like meant to be this mystical thing, but it's meaningful. And he goes to his temple because he is still a Buddhist Taoist, and he speaks to his monk, his priest, and he says, I defied Wei. I didn't do what he asked me to do. And his monk says, you know what this means, right? Like, you're in trouble now. And he says, I know what I have to do. It's
How many notes did you take?
about 5 pages.
I mean, we gotta watch the time, too.
Damn it. All right. We'll skip a little bit.
I mean, we can just talk generally
about
it. So,
okay. We'll skip this. We'll skip to the character Meg Coburn's office. She's this super 90s looking forger counterfeiter, and her specialty is passports and IDs. He gets referred to her from, what's the guy's name? Eddie. He's kind of a throwaway character, middleman. And
he said he typically doesn't like to refer her because she is a lot. She's a lot to deal with.
And in the conversation, their first conversation, there's a really cool, Tchaikovsky's gun moment where she's got the gun under the she's got the gun under the desk, and she's always got her hand on it. She's asking him very general questions. He just wants an ID. He's trying to be cool about it, but he's also like,
because he needs to go back home because his family is now in danger because he did not assassinate.
We learned that
Michael
because
Rooker,
he owes Wei.
Son.
Right. We learned that because in this scene, it's not explicitly told, but you surmise that he owes Wei a debt, and that debt, the collateral being held, is his mother and his daughter their lives are being held hostage. He's found there. We get my second favorite gunfight of the movie is in Meg Coburn's office. This really cool, and this is where you really see the John Woo influence. There's scenes of people moving along walls and shooting in these straight lines, and then there's one where Mira Sorvino and Chow Yun-fat are moving in opposite directions, and there's a guy this way and there's a guy that way, and they both stop and switch directions and shoot the opposite way, standing each up, but they're like almost back to back, and it's this very cool like flowing motion that this whole scene has, and it goes on for a while.
Yeah.
This shootout is probably 8 minutes long. They get away. No, he gets away. She gets arrested.
She gets arrested.
In the conversation that she has with Michael Rooker's character, oh, there it is. Oh, so good. In the conversation that she has with Michael Rooker's character, he says, you know, you're not safe out there, but I can keep you safe in here. Like, if he's like, I'm not going to arrest you. I'll let you walk out, but you know what you're walking into, right? And her character is a actual strong woman. You think of how many actually strong women characters did you get in the 90s in male-dominated films? She stands head and shoulders as a character above even Michael Rooker's character, because there's some times where he doesn't actually do the tough guy thing. And she does.
Yeah, so we do find a little bit about her, like she's been clean for 4 years.
No, she's been lucky or good for 4 years.
No, but he does say that she's been clean so she might have had a drug history before or something. But she's been doing this kind of work for 4 years.
Well, since she was 14. She had like a full rap sheet before she was 16.
Yeah.
She's been living on the streets by herself her whole life. So she's tough. She knows what she's doing. She's genuinely a tough character.
Yeah.
Like, it's not this thing of, like, one of the reasons that I have a problem with Kiss of the Dragon is Fonda's character in that is given this faux tough guy, but for some reason, whenever push comes to shove, Jet Li has to bail her out.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And it happens and it happens pretty often because we're talking about Jane Fonda, who could Bridget Fonda, who very well could have done a role like this one and pulled it off.
Yeah, I mean, she was in the remake of La Femme Nikita.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a bummer to hear.
Yeah, you'll have to see it because the fight scenes are less gun oriented and more martial arts.
Yeah.
And it's a great Jet Li performance, but there's serious issues with the story, and it all takes place in Paris for some reason.
Oh.
In the meantime, Wei orders the titular replacement killers. So the name of the movie is kind of misinterpreted to the American audience. When you hear the replacement killers and you see Chow Yun-fat and Mira Sorvino on the cover, it's assumed that the title is about the main characters. But really, the title refers to these other two assassins that the bad guy has to bring in to finish what John started. He let her. All right, I'm trying to jump through my. When we get back to Meg's apartment, which, by the way, this is the last outfit she puts on for the rest of the movie, and you'd think, like, in an action movie like this, when a female character's costume that she's wearing gets tore up, it would be in, like, a sexual way, but really it kind of just makes her look tougher because she puts on this red top and these, like, leathery pants. And over the course of the film, this outfit just gets tore up. Like, at a certain point, you see her shirt held together with safety pins. But it's not used in, like, a sexual way. It's almost used, like, when you'd see in a Schwarzenegger movie where his shirt gets tore up.
Yeah, because most of it, her shirt is just open. She's just wearing a bra and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's never portrayed... what's the word I'm looking for? Exploitively. It's not like exploiting her.
Yeah.
This is where we get the Death in Vegas song Rocco. And please believe I'm putting both of these songs in this episode on Spotify. There's a lot of cool score in this area. It's too bad I can't, like, show you all, but I highly endorse you going out and trying to find this movie for the score also. we get this cool shootout at a car wash. This is where we get Patrick Kilpatrick. He's his name is Price, and he's Jurgen Prochnow's number one guy, and John just wipes him out in this really cool, almost like gun ninja way. He's like slipping through the car wash pieces. There's a part where he's on like a mechanic board, and he slides out from under a sponge, and he shoots a dude, and then he just slides back under the sponge. So they go to an arcade because she still needs a picture of him to make the passport. So they go to an arcade, and she's going to use the photo booth.
Yeah.
For people of a certain age, a photo booth is where we used to have to go to get selfies. We didn't always have those.
Some malls or what's left of malls might still have them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So he gets her to sit, and they have a really meaningful conversation through the door of this photo booth, and this is where he starts having his flashbacks of his mother and his daughter and what this really means. With each flash of the photo booth, you get these insights into what's in his head, and this face that he makes here is, like you said, it's very meaningful. You see him get sad and angry at the same time. Okay, and now we meet the actual replacement killers. So these two guys, very 90s hitmen, all leather. They're wearing all leather, and it's Danny Trejo and Till Schweiger, and they're big guys. And they get off a plane, and they're plotting. They're not like, it's a little over dramatic, but it's fun. They get their guns from a storage locker in the airport.
No care for human life at all, because sadly, an innocent lady does get caught in the crossfire.
There's a couple kids they catch them in the arcade originally, and they level this arcade. And there's a couple like teenagers that get just blown apart in this arcade. And then as they're running away in a parking garage, there's a really cool thing that Chow Yun-fat does where he's running and he lays down with his hand up, and he's shooting this way, like sliding on his back. And they're shooting at him, but as he stands up, they bring their guns up, and they just blow this lady driving the truck apart. And that's when, I mean, it seems like too much, but it's effective because it's like, okay, these guys don't care. They're here for one reason, and they don't care who gets in the way.
Because then John is kind of just staring back at them, and you can tell, like, he wants to check on this lady. I mean, sadly, it's too late, but he's feeling helpless, and they're kind of staring at each other through the windows of the truck. Yeah. And then, so Meg is like, John, come on. And so they leave, and then the replacement killers hear the police coming up, and they kind of, no words, they turn around and start.
This cop car gets cut in half with bullets. Like, and especially they're using like a MP5 and like a Scorpion or something, and they just like bring bullets up where the two cops are sitting in the car, and it's just like, and then they just walk away. They reload and walk away. Till Schweiger looks like he's like 19 in this movie.
I know.
He looks super young in this movie. Danny Trejo doesn't look at. He's got no stash. And they don't really exploit Trejo either. At any point, a director could be like, yeah, you're huge, so you got to walk around with your shirt off or something like. There's actually a point where instead of having him speak Spanish, his name is Collins. It's not even like a Mexican name. So like at any point, a worse director could be like, oh, you have to speak broken English or something. And he actually, at one point, said like he talks like a normal person. Most directors have him do like Spanglish and take advantage of Danny Trejo. No, they use him as a perfect action movie bad guy without exploiting who he is as an actor. And they shackled the trucking. Okay. we're gonna stop here because I actually stopped taking notes. There's a conversation right after this that the Meg and the John character have, because when he first gets her to come with him, he holds her at gunpoint. Mm-hmm. And she says, we're going to have this conversation again when the gun's in my hand. And we'll see what you think of it then. Which actually is something that comes back later on.
Yeah.
But in this conversation now, the gun is in her hand. And she brings it back up. Okay, what do you think now about me having to be with you? Having to go with you to do this stuff. And he goes, well, I guess it's your choice now. And there's this really tense moment. And he takes the gun away. Mm-hmm. And instead of it being like, I'm being hard on you because I want to teach you, he's like, you know better. I'm trying to help you. Don't put the gun in my face. She throws like an ashtray at him or something. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool scene. She throws an ashtray at him, and he shatters the ashtray out of the air with the butt of the pistol. Mm-hmm. And he like doesn't even look. He's just But the conversation they have here, she says, I'm just looking for that one thing. That one thing that makes amends for all the bad stuff I've done.
That's a later conversation.
Well, this is where we're going to stop talking about the story, though. Mm. And I think it dawns on him that there's such concept of that thing. And he realizes that he can't just run. He can't run back to China and try to save his family. He has to try to save Michael Rooker's character's son, or else, because she brings up that leaving now would be the same as if he had pulled the trigger back when he had the kid in his sights. Mm-hmm. And it's this moral compass change of the movie that's really, you just see the whole movie switch to, okay, this is what we're doing now. It's not about saving my family, it's about saving the boy. And that's actually where I ended my notes for a reason. Oh, one other thing. Later on in the movie, we get an uncredited Mako appearance.
Oh, yeah.
He's not in the credits at all. Mako just shows up in a doorway, and you're like, hey! 80s action.
He shows up, and then he's instantly killed.
But it's Mako. And it's obviously him. It's obviously him. Mm-hmm. And he comes out of nowhere, and he's not anywhere in the credits. So did he just, show up on set like, hey, Chow, I heard you were shooting a movie. He's like, yeah, you want to die? And he was like, totally. But I stopped my notes there for a reason. Because I love this movie so much that I want people to hear what I just said and be invested enough to go watch the end themselves. Because some of the lighting, some of the shot placement, some of the background symbolism of what's left of this movie after the making amends conversation is so cool and meaningful and influential on action films that you do see it in things like Inglourious Bastards. You see it in future Fuqua films. There's so many things that happen in this movie that Antoine probably watched later and went, I'm going to have to do that again because I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to change it a little bit. But I like that. Mm-hmm. So I really, go what like that. Oh my God. Go watch this if you can find it. If you can't find it, put in the comment section that you can't find it. That's one of the things we'll do when we go look for movies is we'll try to find more copies of this if someone says they want one.
Or if you know us, you can borrow our copy.
You can just borrow our copy gladly. Gladly. Because I adore this film. I really do.
Yeah, I was really surprised by it. I thought it would be cheesy, and it really wasn't. It was very stylish. I liked the music. I liked the characters. There wasn't a love story, but I do feel like it had the potential, and I found myself wishing that Chow Yun-fat, Mira Sorvino, and Michael Rooker would just make sequels or make more movies together. I just really liked the chemistry of all the characters, and I wish we could have seen like more of these people together.
But sadly, between Mira Sorvino's troubles with that ugly piece of trash Weinstein and Chow Yun-fat's troubles with John Woo, I feel like anything more from that we would have seen from John Lee and Meg Coburn was doomed as soon as the movie started.
They could have even played different characters, like in a different movie, like, I don't know.
Because they did, every actor in this whole movie has excellent chemistry with each other. Even, like, there is a scene between Jürgen Prochnow and Mira Sorvino. That's a really cool action scene. There's a really cool action set piece and scene between those two actors that ends up being this awesome, like, cat and mouse game.
It moves very quickly. Even, like, the end, there's just some of the shots in this, like, for instance, there's one villain that gets killed, and it's another character that, like, falls off of a high place, but it's raining, and as he's falling, he's hitting wires, so there are sparks, like, flying everywhere, and it kind of just looks like fireworks being added to the scene, and then Chow Yun-fat is looking up into the rain.
He's looking up at the sky, and there's this red neon light.
Yeah, and there is, like, a scene, too, where it's, like, a tight alleyway, and there's a car that's backing up, and he's shooting it, and so it's, like, swerving everywhere, and he starts doing, like, his spins with the gun, because there's villains, like, everywhere, and he's spinning, and his coat is flying. It's just really cool.
So that is our scene again of 1998's The Replacement Killers, directed by Antoine Fuqua / John Woo.
Yeah. And so, going from Antoine to Anton, we will go
I see what you did there!
We will go into this week's Themes to Be Heard segment, which, for this episode, we decided to discuss Depeche Mode's 1990 music video for Enjoy the Silence.
And conversely, you did not take any notes for our scene again. I didn't take any notes for our Themes to Be Heard.
Well, so I just kind of took notes on, like, the background of this. So, Depeche Mode is my favorite band, and Enjoy the Silence to me is one of the best songs ever written. It was written by Martin Gore, who is the main songwriter for Depeche Mode. He's also the second vocalist in the band. Dave Gahan is the main vocalist, the guy with the really deep voice.
Listen, Dave Gahan is so fucking cool. Like, he just is. I think he's awesome.
But, so Depeche Mode were this popular, like, new wave band in the 80s, and then they did start getting dark. They started dressing kind of like S&M, like dominatrix kind of fashion, but they started getting dark.
It's almost like post-gothic.
Yeah. So then 1989, 1990, well, at this point they were huge because they had released this album in the late 80s called Music for the Masses, and they had done this big tour, and they have there was a documentary made at the time called 101 because they did their Music for the Masses tour, and their final show, the 101st show, was at the Rose Bowl in California, and it was this big deal. I've actually met people that attended this concert. That's how big it was. And so they had a documentary made, And just when you think, like, oh, this band can't get any bigger, they release this album called Violator, and the first single was Personal Jesus, and then they released Enjoy the Silence, and they just blew up. Like, this song has been covered by so many
Hundreds
people.
of times. Hundreds of times.
Most notably by Tori Amos and Lacuna Coil. Lacuna Coil, I think they went to number one with their version, and the New York Post actually considers their cover like on the top 100 covers list of all time.
It's a good cover.
And Tori Amos did a cover, just her and a piano, and Stereo Gum considered it in the top 8 of the top Depeche Mode covers of all time. Other people have also covered it, like Breaking Benjamin. There was a German producer, DJ named Mike Coughlin that did a version of it called The Silence that actually went number 1 in Europe, I believe. But this song is certified gold in the US and Germany, and surprisingly, as well known as it is and how popular and how many times it's been covered, I don't think it was ever even like nominated for a Grammy. It just won like a Brit. Yeah, like a Brit award. And it only went to number 1 in Denmark, Poland, Spain, and it did go to number 1 in the US, but on the Billboard Alternative top 100 or whatever. So the song was originally written as more of a ballad, because as most of you who know the song know the lyrics, all I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. So it's kind of about just wanting the simple things, like the things that you already have. So it was written as a ballad. And Depeche Mode at this time was Dave Gahan, the singer, Martin Gore, the second singer, the main songwriter.
Who also played guitar.
Yeah. At this point, he really started playing more guitar on their songs. Alan Wilder, who is no longer with the group, and many people miss him because he did contribute a lot to the group. And then Andrew Fletcher,
who notoriously doesn't contribute anything to the group. Like, there's a big joke.
That's not on my copy of Monster Ballad.
Hey, Marky Mark. Marky Mark from the Marky Mark. Yeah. Matty Ice and Marky Mark.
So tomorrow night at 10 p.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, go check out the Marky Mark and Matty Ice podcast.
Yeah.
Especially if you're really into video games and stuff. They're very entertaining.
If you're a nerd,
and they're very funny.
Yep.
But then, so this song was written as a ballad, and I think you can find like original bits and pieces of it on YouTube and stuff. But then Alan Wilder, in the studio, like suggested they kind of go with a more up-tempo version of it, and that's what you hear on the album. And at this time, they were working a lot with this photographer, music video director named Anton Corbijn, and he is most known for his work with Depeche Mode and U2. He has directed 20 of Depeche Mode's music videos. So he came up with this concept of a king that is kind of just wandering around looking like for something simple. And if initially
it really does look like this king looking for his moment of peace.
Yeah, initially the band rejected the idea, so then he kind of just expanded it a little more. Like, well, what if we have this king who's just looking for a quiet place to sit, and like these different locations. So most of the video is just Dave Gahan dressed like a king, like a stereotypical.
He has
like,
this long
king.
flowing robe, and actually that's why we have this crown here, and it's actually right next to our Depeche Mode VHS tapes. I don't know if you could see that that's a Depeche Mode tape right there, but that's why that's there.
So, they decided to go with this theme. There's a children's storybook called The Little Prince, and it's this philosophical, like, children's story. And so they kind of used those themes, and Dave Gahan is just walking around, and we haven't put up the pictures for this. We'll get the pictures going, but he's walking around, and he's just carrying, like, a deck chair, and they shot it in, like, the Scottish Highlands, the Swiss Alps, and the, like, parts of Portugal. So we mostly are just following him walking around with this chair, and he's just a king that has everything except a quiet place to sit. So that's basically the video, and then there are shots of the band in black and white.
I also wanted to point out the really cool different interpretations of the Violator album cover, because it's this very simple painting of this flower, but it flashes throughout the course of the video in different colors and palettes, and that's really there's the Violator album cover.
Yeah. So Anton Corbijn, he photographed like a lot of famous musicians like Bruce Springsteen, but he is most notably known for working with U2 and Depeche Mode. He is now more of a film director. He directed this movie in 2007 called Control, which is about Ian Curtis from Joy Division, and it's this really great movie. But since then, he's directed The American with George Clooney and A Most Wanted Man.
Why does that sound so familiar?
I know it's based on a book, but yeah, he started in music and mostly did music videos, but so there are two different versions of this music video. One ends with Dave Gahan like looking right into the camera, singing the last line of the song, which is "Enjoy the Silence," and then he puts his finger up like this to shh. And the other version just ends with him sitting on a chair in the snow. And then so there's not really like a big difference, but both versions have like different shots of the band as a group.
Now, when I just want to reiterate something. That's a good picture. When Tara says that they shot in Portugal and the Swiss Alps and the coast of Portugal, the Swiss Alps, the Scottish Highlands, I really want to emphasize the idea that these are shots of Gahan carrying this chair, walking through these beautiful landscapes, that they actually traveled the world to get these landscapes, to get these shots of these landscapes. It's actually Gahan, because when I was watching it, I was like, there's no freaking, are these matte paintings? Did they just like go to different, like, is it a sound stage? No, they went to these places.
Actually, there are some shots that aren't of him. The long shots of him walking in the snow, it's actually the producer of the video, Richard Bell, because Dave Gahan was getting sick of the cold and he left the set. So they dressed the producer up instead and had him do the long shots in the snow. But the video, it's a very simple concept with a very powerful song, and it's very vivid. I love the look of it. It's like lomography, like film photography. It's so vivid. And there are pictures that come up. There's another video of the song. It was shot for French TV, but they actually filmed it on the South Tower of the World Trade Center, right here.
Oh, wow.
So there's that video as well where they performed it on the World Trade Center. You can find that on YouTube. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. It's one of the best songs ever written. A very simple concept for a music video, but very iconic. Just the look of him dressed as a king and walking around with this like lawn chair, because he's this man that has everything and he just wants a quiet place to sit. Mm-hmm. And that is Enjoy the Silence.
It is, and it's an excellent song. I feel that it's a super influential video on the art of videos, because it really did bring... Because at that time, music videos were mostly just performance shots. They were mostly performance pieces.
Especially coming from like all the hair metal videos and stuff.
So to take a music video and turn it into this artistic auteur piece probably put a lot of people on their heels the first time they saw it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh wow, you can tell a story in an artistic way with a music video, and then actually from then on, we start to see, from that point on, we start to see a lot of music videos that are these intricate stories that go with the song. And that from here to about the possibly late 90s is where we get all the great music videos.
Yeah, I remember being really young and like on VH1 and MTV, they always were coming out with those lists of like the 100 music videos of all time. Like, music videos were a real art form, and there are still some artists that
attempt that,
but like with YouTube and everything and MTV, as far as I know, I don't think they show any music videos at all. Like, I know at one point they would at like 3 a.m. or something, like very odd hours, but honestly I don't even know if they do that anymore.
Most recently, okay, and I wanted to run this by our viewers and you, because okay. I'll do it by myself, but most recently the art of the music video was revived almost in a standardized movie form by Bo Burnham. Mm-hmm. Bo Burnham's Inside is basically a collection of music videos set to his songs that really tell these short stories, but also this longer narrative throughout the course of the movie. And I think it's masterfully done. And one of the things I actually want to do is track by track go through it and analyze each one.
For Inside, too, I feel like I read recently he filmed it in the Nightmare on Elm Street house. I miss watching music videos at night with friends.
Yeah, totally.
So do we, Mark.
Totally.
Okay, so my first job, I worked third shift, and like at that time I was more into like MTV2, like,
or Fuse.
They didn't, yes.
Fuse.
And where I worked, there was a VCR, so I used to have so many VHS tapes with like random music videos, or like MTV had like making the video, and I had all of these episodes of like My Chemical Romance making Helena. Yep. And there was Subterranean on MTV2, and the VJ.
Is that where you got your name? Is it
yeah,
really?
Yeah,
that's
that
cool.
Was a big, because that's how I first heard of like MIA and Franz Ferdinand.
Really?
And yeah, because the VJ's name was Jim. I don't remember his last name. That's where I first heard of like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. They used to play.
See, I just had cool college friends who that's all the stuff like, they listen to.
I wish I still had all my VHS tapes because I have so many like episodes. Like Sunday nights, I think, was when Subterranean was on, and like artists like you might not know, like Tom Veck. He was like this British singer-songwriter. Like he used to interview like all these like obscure artists that like Block Party. That's how I heard about Block Party. It was such a good time in my life, and I think that VJ ended up going to Much Music or VH1 or something. I wish I could remember his last name, but
like I remember the mid 2000s, early mid 2000s was the revival of Headbangers Ball. So that's where heavy metal, it was like just post new metal. All of the heavy metal bands started getting enough music to make videos again.
Yeah.
And they would try to do cool videos. I mean, every once in a while you'd see something by like Cannibal Corpse from the 90s where it's just like gore. But there were some cool videos, but the problem with those is a lot of them were just performance pieces. Yeah, I was super into... I experienced Franz Ferdinand on some weird music site. I couldn't remember what it was, what it was called. Oh, I've been listening to a lot of Franz Ferdinand because in movie news, which we weren't even planning to do tonight, we watched the documentary about the Sparks Brothers.
Sparks. If you've never heard of Sparks, oh man, what a career they've had. But they formed a super group with Franz Ferdinand, like, I think it was like 10 years ago, but they were called FFS.
Yeah, 2013.
But yeah, the documentary was made by Edgar Wright, and such a fascinating... It's like 2 hours long,
No. It's like 3.5 hours long.
This band, it's just these two brothers, and the career they've had, like, they were even influential, like, on Depeche Mode and, like, all these other bands.
And one of the things that, especially Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran is talking on this documentary, and he says...
Oh, he's not in it.
Oh,
it's
was
Nick
it?
Rhodes and John Taylor.
It was Nick Rhodes.
Yeah.
He says, whether or not you know it, your favorite band... Whether or not they know it, your favorite band was influenced by Sparks. Because someone that they were influenced by was probably influenced by Sparks.
Yeah.
You can follow their career back far enough to where they influenced somebody that you like.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been listening to a lot of Sparks.
Well, I listened to FFS, and then I went and listened to Franz Ferdinand just to, like, compare. Because Sparks does this very ethereal, like, dream pop music, and Franz Ferdinand fit in there. And then you listen to Franz Ferdinand stuff as a band on their own, and it's a little more old rock oriented.
Franz Ferdinand just wanted to make girls in the club dance when they came out. That was what they wanted to do, and oh my god, I used to love them so much. I used to have a Franz Ferdinand t-shirt that I wore all the time.
I just remember that Take Me Out video was so cool.
Yeah. I loved, like, their first album on AOL Instant Messenger. One of my very first names was Dark O Matinee because they had a song called Dark of the Matinee. Speaking of Duran Duran, you should hear me sing Hungry Like a Wolf on karaoke. It's absolutely horrible.
That's fine.
Where do you do that?
Where do you do you gotta tell us where you do karaoke. Because dude, I'm there. It'll be you, me.
Now.
It'll be you, me, and I'll bring my buddy Adam. He'll do his rendition of Chandelier. We'll make it a night.
Oh man.
But this was fun. Like, because this is such an influential music video, we have the chance to talk about music videos as a whole.
Yeah. Well, if we're kind of going down that music route now too, so we're kind of talking about the Sparks Brothers, documentary, but on Thanksgiving, Disney Plus just released the Peter Jackson documentary for the Beatles Get Back. We've only watched part 1 so far, but it ended on such a cliffhanger. Hooligans. It had a fire, though.
Hooligans had a fire? That's a bummer. I haven't been there in a long time, but I remember that was a cool place. That's out that way.
Oh.
It's out. Like, it's not near other bars.
But yeah, if you're a fan of the Beatles, Peter Jackson just released this whole
4 hour. Each part is like 4 hours long.
The whole thing is 7 hours, but the first part was released on Thanksgiving, so that's what we watched when we got back home. And it ended on such a cliffhanger because it was right when George Harrison left the band. And then the rest of them were going to go to, I think, John Lennon's house and kind of figure out what to do. And I guess they were fighting.
They talked to George, and all it says is, they talked to George. It did not go well. And that's how it ended. And we were like, no!
The whole thing is out now. They were just releasing each part, like, each day. But I believe the whole thing is out now. But if you're a fan of the Beatles, there was, when Let It Be was released, they were making, like, a documentary at the time. And the documentary, when it was released, I guess, did not go very well. Like, it did not make them look like in a good light.
It was edited in a way to make their fighting look worse than it actually was.
Yeah, so Peter Jackson somehow got, like, all the footage and, like,
edited it
all
back
the
originally.
audio that they could salvage, and it is really fascinating to watch them, like, how they write songs, all the goofing off they did. Like, I was laughing out loud.
There are multiple points where you see somebody halfway through rolling a joint. Like, they've got the paper in their hand and they're just talking. You never see them smoke it, but you'll always see them, like...
But there are moments where, like, McCartney and Lennon, they're just playing their guitars, like, looking at each other, and then it's just magic.
Like... And they'll start playing like an old 50s, like rockabilly song, like rock song, and they'll look at each other, and one of them will play the riff, and then they'll lock eyes, and then they'll just start playing the song together, and then it's just like, it happens.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, but, and my whole life, I'd imagine George, because my mom was a George Harrison fan first and a Beatles fan second.
I think George is my favorite Beatle, and you still have never finished the Martin Scorsese documentary on him.
Didn't I fall asleep? I think I fell asleep.
I think so, because that one is long too, but it's called Living in the Material World.
Yeah.
But watching that, just... George was my favorite instantly after watching that.
So growing up, I'd always assumed that when George left the Beatles, it was like a half-baked, fuck you, you're cool. And it's not. He walked up to their producer and he said, tell the boys I'll see them in the clubs, hey? And he just walked out. And that was basically like, I'm not coming back here, but if I see them, we're cool. If I see them outside of here, I don't...
I mean, you could see his frustration, though, because it's like he would be doing his thing, and then Paul McCartney would be like, you need to cut back because you're overshining John when he's doing this part. And, like, you could see, like, the frustration because, like, he knew what he wanted to do, and it was to the point where he's like, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll do it.
He didn't feel like an equal part of the band.
Yeah.
And Ringo didn't care if he was an equal part of the band. Because there's lots of time where they're talking, they're arguing, and Ringo's just like staring at his drum set. Mm-hmm. He's just waiting. Like, he just waited it out.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I would suggest that. I would suggest that if you have Disney Plus to watch Get Back, the documentary by Peter Jackson about the. Yeah. And it's not even a documentary. It's just a re-editing and release of this footage. Because he doesn't really... I mean, he adds stuff in every now and then, like pictures and stuff. He doesn't change anything. He just put the footage back in the correct order.
Yeah. And then if you have Netflix, you can watch the Sparks Brothers on Netflix. But now
Meat and potatoes.
we have come to the conclusion.
The final
of
part. That sounds
It
very good.
Follows.
I hope you do check it out, Mark.
Yes.
I hope you do, because it is amazing. You might have to plan some time around it, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
And then visit local shop Beatles and Beans for your coffee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
If you did not know, Bay City has a Beatles-themed coffee shop. It is right next to the antique stores on, is that Water Street? I don't know why this place is in Bay City. It seems too incredible for Bay City.
I think it is considered, or was at one time considered, the largest collection of Beatles memorabilia in the planet.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you walk in and there's not much room to walk because there's so much Beatles stuff.
The ceilings are covered with, like, records. They are cash only.
Yeah,
just
they're
to
cash
warn
only.
you.
But also,
But-
all the drinks are Beatles puns.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So
The conclusion.
Now for the conclusion.
The mighty ending of It Follows.
Yeah.
So,
The happy ending? Would you say
The
this is a happy ending?
happy ending.
Oh.
Okay, so we ended last week right on Greg literally getting fucked to death.
By his mom. Well, by the entity was pretending to be his mom. So yeah, so Jay was in his house because she was trying to warn him. And
like an idiot, he didn't listen.
yeah, and so she's driving off, and
She
we
takes his
see
car.
him- yeah, and we see him. He's walking. The entity is moving a little bit faster now, and so you see him, like, out the back window, just kind of walking a little fast after her. But she drives off into the woods. And so she's sitting on the top of her car, just kind of staring up at the trees.
Well, she like cries herself to sleep.
Yeah, she's sobbing because she feels horrible. She feels like Greg's death is her fault, and she's feeling worse about passing it on to him. And so she sleeps on the top of her car, and I'm not sure how far she's driven, but she has bought herself some time. And she wakes up in the morning, and she's actually right by a beach, and she hears voices.
She hears the music coming from the boat.
Yeah, and there's a boat out on the water, and there's like 3 guys on the water on the boat. And so she starts like taking off her clothes and going into the water.
So you're assuming she's going to go out there and try it again with these guys because they happen to be on a boat.
We don't actually know what happens. So
Cuts right away.
She's driving back, and she is wet from being in the water.
And crying.
And she does look upset, but we don't know if it's because she did pass it on to one of them on the boat, or she decided last minute not to, because in the next scene, Paul asks her, like, well, have you thought about passing it on? And she's like, no, but we don't actually know what happened.
Well, we do, because she very quickly says it'll be here soon. So we assume
but
it's safe to assume that she started on that path and then decided against it.
Yeah, so at this point, she's Kelly and Yara are sleeping in the room with her. They're on her bed, and she's sleeping on the floor.
We did skip one kind of important thing of the piece of symbolism, is that when she gets home, we see that her pool has been destroyed.
Oh, yeah. So her pool is empty, and, like, a part of the side is kind of just... Broken.
It's broken, and it like there's a layer of water in the bottom, but it looks like all the water has run out one side.
Yeah.
Which, if you've seen our past segments on It Follows, that pool was her safe space. That's where she felt strong. Mm-hmm. So she is completely vulnerable at this point. There is no strong place for her.
Yeah, so they're in the room, and she's to the point where she has chairs propped up against the doorknob of her bedroom, like in case it does show up. And so this is when Paul comes over and she lets him in and they're talking, and he's trying to suggest to her to pass it on to him, but she doesn't want to, and he holds her hand and he does try to kiss her, but she wants nothing to do with
when
it.
he brings it up, the way she rejects that is that it comes off as the rejection of a sexual advance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not considering him doing it to help her. She's doing it in the way she's rejecting, like saying no in the way she feels like she should have said no to Greg because Greg just wanted to have sex with her.
Mm-hmm. And that is something that comes up. Paul is like, well, I liked you. Why didn't you pick me? Why did you pick Greg? And she's like, I thought he would be okay. He wasn't scared. And plus, we slept together in high school and it wasn't a big deal. And so then Paul is still sitting on the floor and she goes to look out the window, and we do see there's a cop car over at Greg's house, and that front window that had been broken into is now boarded up. And so Paul looks up at Jay's mirror, and again, we go back to like one of the earlier scenes we saw.
One of the earliest.
That she has these pictures on her mirror, and one of them is of her in a pool, and it looks, you can kind of see like the background, like it looks like a public pool. And so Greg is like, do you remember where we had our first kiss? And he's like, do you trust me? Paul. Did I say Greg?
Yeah. Greg's dead.
No. Greg's dead. So, yeah, so then the next scene, we see all four of them getting in the car, and then the creepy neighbor kid who was spying on her earlier, he's riding his bike, and he kind of just pulls up on the sidewalk, and he's watching them all getting in the car, and they have like these like bags and stuff.
Which, in the past, where this kid has looked more like a voyeur, he's looked more like a unwanted watcher. Now he seems concerned. When he rides up, he stops his bike and he leans forward. It's more of a concerned body language than in the past when he's hiding behind a fence with only his eyes showing. So it shows the humanity of that kid as opposed to what we saw in the beach house.
Yeah. And so they're reversing out of the driveway, and we get like a close-up of Jay's face, and she kind of looks up, and then we see a naked man standing on her roof, and she's visibly upset. But now I've read like a few blogs and stuff, and it kind of makes more sense now. If you remember, so that's why with this movie, I feel like I see different things every time I watch it. But in one of the earlier scenes, we saw a picture of Jay as a child with her grandparents, and this naked figure that is now standing on the roof. He's not moving or anything.
It's almost like he's flexing his muscles.
Yeah, he's just standing up there staring at her. But that is
the actor,
the embodiment of her grandfather that is standing on the roof looking at her, because it can show up as people you love just to hurt you more. And so they drive, and then we do see them like walking kind of in this more deserted part of town, and Yara is talking about how at a certain point her parents stopped letting her go past a certain street. I think it was 8 Mile, because that's where the city starts and the suburbs end. And they're talking about how, because
thanks for that.
It's blurred out.
Yeah, I know. I was like, thanks. I appreciate that. It's blurred out. I don't have to do that in post.
But, again, it's like the themes of like the economic hardship and their parents. This was a place, so they're heading to this like community center where they used to go swimming
as kids,
and at some point their parents no longer wanted them to go there because it was more like in the city, like.
Well, also, all of us have that place in real life.
Mm-hmm.
For me, there was a local rock venue called Jamestown Hall.
Oh,
which
yeah.
we used to go there and just watch local bands play and jam.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, Jamestown Hall went from the local music venue to the local place where everybody went to do drugs.
Mm.
And there was that change as everybody who went there aged. There was this what's the word I'm looking for? This corruption of it. From this innocent thing where, oh my God, isn't it cool we have this place, to something that was the opposite of that.
Yeah,
and I believe everybody can kind of resonate with that.
Mm-hmm. So now they're walking back to this place their parents didn't want them to go to anymore, and Jay is like, oh, my mom told me the same thing about like, oh, this is where the city starts and the suburbs end, so don't go there anymore. And it's this large building they go to, and there's like a public pool in there.
And on the way there, we get another one of those synthy songs, these really cool staccato synths. And I'm not sure if this is pool or snare. So if you listen on Spotify, you'll know which one it is because I'll have picked the right one and put it there. But I am going to put one of those songs right here.
So they go to this like community center that they used to go to, and this is where Paul and Jay had their first kiss. And they're setting up like these like traps with like all these electronics, like they're plugging things in, because my guess is that they want to get the entity into the pool and electrocute
They
it.
wanted to get the entity into the pool, Jay out of the pool, and then throw all this stuff in at once and electrocute it to see if that's how they can kill it.
And so Jay...
There's typewriters and TVs and also just any small hair dryers, anything they can get to plug in with an extension cord.
Yeah, so Jay gets into the pool, and as we've talked about a lot, she loves water. She loves to be in the water. And so she's kind of just wading around in the center of this pool, like looking at the doors, and everyone else is kind of just sitting by the pool, and it starts storming outside. So for a few minutes, all you really hear is like the water, like every time it splashes, or like the sound of thunder. It's like really quiet. And then suddenly we don't see anything, but Jay is like, it's here, it's in here. And she's just like pointing, and of course we don't see anything. And then Kelly is like, what does it look like?
And she says, I'm not going to tell you that right now.
She says, I don't want to say.
I don't want to say.
And this is a picture right here. That is the final form of the entity. And as we see, it is her father. The entity has taken the physical embodiment of her father, and she does not want to tell her sister, this thing looks like Dad. Because she's already in the pool and she's freaking out. Like, it's hurting her even more to see her dad, like, walking around wanting to hurt her.
Who we can safely assume has either left the family under bad circumstances or died.
Yeah. So they're like, well, where is it? Like, just point at it. So she's pointing, and she's like, it's just standing there. It's just staring at me. And then suddenly we see the typewriter just fly through the air towards Jay.
When we say this stuff, like I don't know how they did some of this special effects work.
Yeah.
But it looks like real stuff just getting chucked. Because it looks, there's weight behind the movement of the objects, especially when things hit her. When things hit her, it looks like there's impact.
Yep. So she's getting hit because then it throws a TV at her and then a chair, and the chair hits her in the face, so she keeps going under, and every time she comes up, like, she has to hurry because she doesn't know where this thing is gonna be. And Paul has a gun, and he wants to try.
He has the gun from the beach house.
Yeah, and he keeps telling her like point at it, keep pointing, and so she's pointing, and Paul shoots, and he accidentally hits Yara in the leg.
Shoots Yara right in the fucking leg, and you're like, oh, but what you realize is when it does show the entity, and Paul's getting close, the entity's putting its hand like this.
Yeah.
So I think, and you can safely assume that what the entity is doing is purposefully standing between Paul and the girls. It's purposefully putting itself so that if Paul shoots that gun, he's also shooting towards Kelly and Yara.
Yeah. So then Kelly goes to one of the bags, and she like pulls out this cloth, and she's kind of just like waving it, and then she throws it, and you see kind of the form.
It's so cool because there's nothing like, and I believe it's just because of the gravity of the situation and the music and how this scene is set up that when she finally hits the entity with this tablecloth and it just stays there, everybody kind of freezes for a second because nobody else can see this other than Jay, but now it's right in front of them and they can definitely see it. Now, credit to Paul because the first thing he does is shoots this thing right in the fucking head.
Yeah.
Just bang! And it falls into the water. But now we have a new problem because it's in the water.
Yeah, and so this thing had been like throwing the TVs and stuff in, but I'm just assuming because it had been storming, like
and the building had short circuited because after it throws the initial typewriter, you watch the lights go out and then come back on, and it's just the auxiliary lights for the building. If you don't live in Michigan, most public buildings have auxiliary power because we have a pretty consistent form of power outage.
Yeah. So Jay is trying to swim really fast in the water, but it does grab her by the foot, and it's kind of just pulling her under. And
this is a bit symbolic also.
Yeah, so Paul is still like shooting into the water, and he hits it again in the head, so it lets go, and they pull Jay out, and we do see that she has like marks on her ankle, and so Kelly is just like holding her, and at this part Paul is like, is it still down there? Like,
do we need to keep fighting?
Yeah.
Because what do we do?
And so Jay is crawling toward the pool, and we get another one of those point of view shots of her hands, just her hands, which now, looking back, we had these shots throughout the movie of just her hands, and I'm thinking now, like, maybe it's just us seeing things from her point of view, like, because as the audience we're gonna see the entity when it's on the screen and it's coming after her. No one else can, so it's kind of like us seeing things from like if we were her looking down at our hands,
but also experiencing, because if you think back to the one of the first times we see her hands and she's playing with the flower in the back of Jeff's car, she's experiencing this moment of peace with just kind of touching this flower.
Yeah.
And now we are experiencing with her this moment of suspense of looking over the edge of the pool to see if it's still in there.
And so we did get a quick shot of Paul looking into the pool, and the water is clear because he doesn't see anything. But when we see things, we see the hands crawling closer to the water, and then we do see that the water is filling up with like blood.
It looks like a cloud of blood.
So at this point, we really don't know if it's gone for good.
One of the things I wanted to talk about that right there, if you can see that picture. One of the reasons I felt like that was such a significant moment, and it lasts for a while, like she's swimming against its hand for a significant amount of time, is that now that this thing is in the water and it's attacked her in the water, it has now invaded every facet of her life.
Yep.
Even the spot where she feels the safest, the strongest in the water is not safe anymore.
Yep.
It is now completely pervaded every facet.
And so like we pretty much think it's over, and then our next scene is Jay and Paul. Why did I suddenly blank on his name? But they're consummating.
They're having sex.
Yeah. So we don't know if it really is gone and if she's just passing it on, or at this point I do think there are, the feelings there. We've known the whole time that Paul has always liked her. But so they're going at it. I'm trying not to be too.
One of the things
and we do see a quick shot of the door, and there's still a chair like propped up under the doorknob. But what were you gonna
There's
say?
also this question of where is this? Because it's not her house. It's not the beach house.
And they're on a couch in front of a window, and then we do get a shot out the window. It just looks like a backyard, so I don't know if this is Paul's house.
But it also doesn't. It almost looks like a RV. It almost looks like a camper.
I don't
because
know.
the window on it is one of those kind of campers that you put the little switch over and it slides open.
I don't know. And then, so afterwards, they're kind of just sitting there, and Paul is like, do you feel any different? Which is something a lot of people will ask after they've just lost their virginity. So that was kind of like a nice little line to throw in there, like, because he's referring to, like, do you feel different? Like, do you feel like this thing is gone? But usually, like, people, women especially, like, lose their virginity, and, it's like, oh, am I supposed to feel different? Am I supposed to feel like a woman? Or,
well, she also asks him, do you?
Well, she says no, and then she asks him, do you? And
he says no, but not in an honest way. He says no. He obviously feels different. He has feelings for her that are even stronger now.
Yeah.
So when he says no, you can tell that he's like, no.
And then, so he's driving around, and he sees these, like two ladies just kind of hanging out. I'm assuming they're maybe call girls or something.
Yeah, there's two, yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know.
Not call
he's
girls.
Just,
these are straight up hookers.
Well, yeah.
They are 8 Mile hookers.
And it's like he's driving around, like, just in case. Like, he has to keep an option open or something. But then at the same time, it's like we know he wouldn't want to sleep with, because he has these feelings for Jay. And so they visit Yara in the hospital. And I noticed Kelly's not in this.
Yeah, she is.
Where is she?
She's sitting in the corner of the room. She just doesn't say anything.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, she's right there.
So, Paul is sleeping in a chair, and Yara is still, because she's been shot in the leg, she's in the hospital bed, and she's reading from her clam reader. She's reading the conclusion of The Idiot, which she had been reading earlier in the movie, and she had joked that it was about Paul.
A little bit. The quote that she reads is, when there is torture, there is pain and wounds, physical agony, and all this distracts the mind from mental suffering, so that one is tormented only by the wounds until the moment of death. But the most terrible agony may not be in the wounds themselves, but in knowing for certain that within an hour, then within 10 minutes, then within half a minute, and now at this very instant, your soul will leave your body and you will no longer be a person. And that is certain, and the worst thing is that it is certain. Then those are the last lines of those are the last lines of dialogue that we hear in the film.
And as she's reading that, so Paul is sleeping in the chair, and Jay is kind of just watching him sleep, and it's like she is looking at him with more, like, adoration. Like, this guy, like, did this to help me, and he's always liked me, and he was my first kiss, and it's kind of like she's just...
And it's also different from Greg in the sense that, yes, they had sex, and with him fully knowing the gravity of it, but he's still staying with her. He's right next to her at this point, whereas when that happened with Greg, we immediately saw him hanging out with other girls.
Yeah. And so our final shot of the movie, we see Paul and Jay walking down a sidewalk, this scene right here, and they're holding hands. They're kind of dressed similar.
They're also dressed similar to the entity as usually.
And they're just walking, not saying anything, just kind of looking at each other, and we do eventually see a figure, like this really tall, lanky person walking behind them. We don't know for sure if it is still following or if it is just a random person, but it does kind of seem like they are walking. Like, it does seem kind of out of place.
But also, they are aware. Like, regardless of that is the entity or not, they're aware that something's behind them, that something or someone is behind them, and they're comfortable with that.
Yeah. So they're together, and they don't seem scared, and
so
that's how it ends.
Yep. So, give your final conclusions, your analysis overall of the underlying message to you of It Follows.
The message?
Yeah.
I don't know about, like, an exact message. Like, I still feel like I interpret something different every time I watch the movie. Like the end, for example, it's like, are they safe now because, like, it's more like a relationship, it's more, it maybe blooming into love, and if they're just, passing it back and forth between each other, like, is it really gone? Like, did they really defeat it? Because technically Paul, like, shot it twice in the head. Why wasn't it completely done the first time he shot it in the head? Like, and then why the second time? Like, what really was it? Because it was Paul that defeated it for her? Because she had shot it previously before and nothing had happened, but I don't know. I still feel like I need to mull it over more because I see different things every time. What are your thoughts?
So I got a pretty distinct message this time. Yes, he used the explicit of sexual passing, sexual transmission as as a easy way, not easy, as a communicable way of showing the damage a person brings into a relationship with anybody. And it's not just a romantic relationship, but relationships in general. Mm-hmm. The damage a person carries with them at all times. And I feel like it's eventually nullified by that person who accepts the damage you bring. And that's why we see them in white at the end. I don't think we see anybody wearing white other than the entity up until that very last shot with them. Is they have accepted the damage of each of them. Mm-hmm. She understands that now as an adult, and we've talked about this dichotomy of childhood and adulthood throughout the film. She understands that now as an adult, there is no one safe place to go to. She can't just go back to the pool and she's totally safe now. All that damage has pervaded into the places she feels the safest. And that's not particularly a bad thing. That's just part of growing up.
Yeah. So
now that the two of them have accepted the damage of each of them, because he also is bringing, we've seen him also bringing baggage or damage or however you want it, bringing his own life into this relationship on multiple occasions.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's what you were just saying too, is exemplified even in the fact that at this point, every time he grabs her hand, he's grabbing her by the broken hand. Like when he first reaches for her hand, it's the arm with the brace, and even in that final shot, he's like, the director could have easily placed her on the other side, but no, he has them holding hands with her broken arm. So I feel like that's him, like, accepting the broken, wanting to be there, wanting,
but also understanding his capability, him having an understanding of being careful. He can't grab the broken hand. He has to be careful with it.
Yeah.
So, and none of this, and as a film director, and especially a film director who would make a film like this, nothing is by chance. None of these shots, none of these things are just, oh, it happened to be that way. If anybody ever says that about a film like this, they just don't understand filmmaking.
Yeah.
This filmmaker very explicitly put all these things in here for a reason and has never come out publicly and said all these reasons. So it's left up to people like us to try to find those on our own. And the funny part is, we bring our own baggage into finding these things. You will never find a completely objective person looking into a film like this and not bringing a part of themselves into what they're interpreting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it comes back around to the audience, which may be the reasons for the hand shots.
Yeah, I feel like this time watching it, I really focused more on those feelings of, looking back at your more innocent times and thinking like as a child, like, I can't wait until I'm older because I will be allowed to have more freedom. But now that I am grown up, sometimes I find myself wanting to go back where, like, I didn't have all the responsibilities that I have now, that I could live with having all these dreams. Like, I still have so much to experience, instead of, well, I have all these experiences now and maybe I feel unfulfilled or things have been more disappointing, and you don't see the world with as much hope as maybe you once did. Like these characters have these fond memories of this place that is now like in a dangerous area that they
well,
don't...
they also talk about the corruption of that place because they say, remember when we were little kids and we'd come here every weekend, and then they go on to talk about, well, remember when we were teenagers and we came here to get drunk.
Yeah.
We came here to make out with people. But they refer to it as when they were little, oh, remember when Dad used to bring us here to swim and it was so nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, remember when I got drunk and threw up all over your car.
Yeah.
And they do talk about that transition of the corruption of a place, the corruption of a memory of a place.
Yeah, so with this viewing, I feel like I identified more with that and the scenes of just her hands. I started to view it as, oh, hey, maybe like that's the director making us feel like we are Jay twiddling with our hands. And I feel like I've been looking at my own hands more lately. But yeah, like identifying more with that like psychological aspect of the character, feeling like a deeper connection with this character. I just feel like every time I watch this movie, I get something different from it. And I know it is a very polarizing movie for people. A lot of people think it's boring, or they didn't find it scary, or maybe it was hyped up too much when it came out and people were disappointed when they finally saw it. But I think this is probably the most original horror movie that has come out in the last decade, and so much, like, maybe the director wasn't aware of all these little details that...
Oh, I guarantee you he was.
I don't know.
I guarantee you he was. Because you don't make a film with as many deliberate choices. There are so many deliberate choices he made as a filmmaker. Deliberately showing us things over and over and over. Deliberately showing particular places or ideas or concepts. And showing them to us so that we could very definitely see them. You know what I mean? Not just happenstancely they happen to be over here on the side of the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He puts these things right in front of us, and I truly believe as a filmmaker, as the kind of filmmaker I'd like to be, that he's doing that for a very particular purpose. And that's the kind of director who should be applauded, because he's telling more story than we're following with our eyes and ears.
So yeah, I just love everything about this movie. I love the acting, the characters, I mean, it's not a plot based in reality, but a lot of it does feel real. A lot of it feels eerie in a lot of ways, because the director does do a lot of things that you're like, well, that seems really odd. Like, again, why is this character swimming so much when obviously it's cold outside? Like, or like the clam reader, like that's obviously something that doesn't exist. So those things that purposely throw you off and make you feel weird. The music is amazing. Again, this movie would not be what it is without the soundtrack.
No. Shout out to Disasterpiece, who did just a wonderful job. Which I think I think there's gonna be two. This episode tonight is gonna be just chock full of musical tracks if you listen on Spotify. But especially, like, I'm gonna put the end credit music right here. And that's also like this very flowy synth, this very drawing music. I truly hope that more people get the appreciation for this film that we have. And this, like we've said multiple times, this is the exact kind of movie our show was made for. And now you've seen that theme.
Yeah, and maybe if you weren't a fan of this movie, I hope that maybe you'll give it another chance, or maybe we helped you to maybe think of it in a different way. It really is. I seriously feel like you see something different every time you watch it, so I do think if you didn't like it, it does deserve another chance. So, yeah, that's basically all I have to say about it.
All right. So I think that's where we're going to end the episode for tonight.
Yeah, so we concluded It Follows tonight. So for our next episode, we will be starting new analysis of a brand new movie, and it is one of my all-time favorite movies.
But it's not super dense with symbolism.
Yeah,
it's
so
more
we're not going to
funsies.
have as many episodes of it, but it is a movie that I think more people should be aware of.
Yeah.
It is from 1984. It is called Streets of Fire.
It's not a symbolic film like this one is, but it's going to be a fun one to really explore the usage of time and space and music. It's only going to be 2 episodes, and we're going to be able to like plow right through it. But it's excellent. When you say that it's a film about music, it's kind of an understatement.
So, Streets of Fire, it stars a young Diane Lane, Michael Paré, Rick Moranis is in this movie, Amy Madigan, oh my gosh, who else? Willem Dafoe.
I was waiting for that one.
It's an early Dafoe movie.
Oh, is that?
Featuring music written by Jim Steinum,
wow.
who recently passed away.
I'm a bit of a Steinum fan myself.
Oh my gosh. But, yeah, so we'll...
Oh, you think we're going to do a Dafoe movie and I'm not going to do this?
Help me.
Precious?
So, yeah, we'll start... Next episode, we'll start our analysis of Streets of Fire. Our scene again will be Mars Attacks.
Which is a dumb movie. And I love it.
I haven't seen it since I was young.
I saw it in theaters. And then it was one of those things that like would play on cable. I haven't seen it in years, and I know for a fact that it's fucking bonkers. So, woo! Get ready for the craziness if you're keeping up with us.
And then our themes to be heard will be a video by the recently inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame Foo Fighters.
Oh my god, are we doing Learning to Fly?
Yes.
Oh! Oh my god! I love this video so much! It's so fun!
But that is where we will leave off this week. And...
Okay, so... Adopt, don't shop.
Think pink and